Look, 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 look. We got packages. You know, that actually hurt, but Desktop Pilot has sent us a bunch of different controls, and I actually already have most of them mounted to my desk. But let's talk about Desktop Pilot. Desktop Pilot is a company that makes simulator controls for you. You specifically. We all have seen like the Honeycomb, the Cytec, the Logitech, stuff like that. None of that really properly represents the aircraft that you're training in, does it? It all has buttons in places where buttons don't belong, switches. There's always some kind of compromise when comparing it to the actual aircraft. Well, Desktop Pilot said, that's stupid. Let's provide affordable sim gear that properly represents the training aircraft. So we have a flap controller right there. We have a full-on throttle, prop, and mixture controller with the little rotating handles, exactly like you would see in your training aircraft. I believe this is supposed to be modeled after a Cessna 182, or we even got a whole like switch panel set up. So we've got, you know, our fuel pump, all of our different lights, our master, our avionics, and there's even a key, and the key even comes out in the event that you don't want somebody else starting your sim. So let's get into Microsoft Flight Sim. Let's talk about the setup. Let's talk about all these different components and how well they work together. All right, so setup for this is pretty straightforward. If you've plugged a USB port in, you know how to plug these things in. You are gonna need some way to affix them to your desk. That is one kind of downside of this system is they don't come with any mounts. You know, you've got the Honeycomb system, it comes with its mounts. You got the Cytec systems, they come with suction cups. You've got the Thrustmaster. I guess technically the Thrustmaster doesn't come with any way to mount it to your desk, but it feels good to just leave it on your desk. Either way, you are gonna need some way to affix it to your desk. I've got just a little plank of wood. There's some screw holes in the bottom of this, and I just attached it with a little clamp, and then I got some Velcro holding this on. And then this is really just sitting on my desk because it is just a switch panel. There isn't really any need to affix it anywhere, but they are currently working on a panel for you to just mount this to. They are currently working on a full sim for you to purchase. And given that every little bit is modular and, oh shit, that was too loud. It just has regular old screws on the front. You can take this box apart and mount it whichever way you see fit. I just, you know, I'm gonna be using a lot of different sim gear, so I need to make sure that I can get it on and off of my desk reasonably. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the Cessna 172. That's what these are really made for. I guess with the controllable pitch propeller, it's really meant for the 182, but I'm not giving Microsoft Flight Sim $20 for a 182. So let's hop into Microsoft Flight Sim and check it out. All right. Setup is pretty straightforward. This is actually kind of funny. I had the magneto switch off, so it turned itself off. So you can see, I started the engine right up. It isn't spring loaded. You know, you win some, you lose some. We do have our fuel pump that we can turn on. We do have our beacon light, our taxi light, our landing light, our navs, our strobes. There's even pitot heat switch right here. There's our avionics switches so that we can shut down our G1000s if we really feel like shutting down our G1000s. There's the master switches over here so we can just shut down the entire electrical system of the airplane. But this mixture knob is just like the airplane. You can unscrew it to get that fine granular mixture control. So just like you would do in the actual airplane, you'd push in your throttle up to about 1200 RPM. A little bit more, a little bit more. Right about there, right? Maybe just a little less. And you're gonna unscrew the mixture and look for that RPM rise, just like you would do in the actual airplane. And you can see right there, we got about 10 RPM out of it, 20 RPM out of it, little more. That looks like it might be it. That might be leaned for taxi. So then we're gonna bring it back to idle. Make sure the engine doesn't die. it doesn't, we can come over and press the rest of our buttons to get our G1000 set up all the way. And we're going to bring that RPM in up to about 1,800 feet on the brakes. And we're going to go through a run up like you would do in the actual airplane. So 1,800 RPM. Just a little more. And right about there. A little more. As you can see, it's just like it works in the actual airplane. You need those little bumps. And there we go. Now let's check our left magneto. We see we got about 120 RPM drop back to the both. Then we're going to check our right magneto. Same, about 120 RPM drop back to both. Bring it back to idle, make sure it doesn't die. And now we are all ready for a takeoff. Let's go ahead and release our parking brake. Mixture's full rich. Don't forget, we're going to do a short field effort. So we're going to drop 1 notch of flaps. And you can see it's working exactly like you would expect in the actual airplane. So feet on the brakes, full power. Release the brakes. Engines are in the green. Rolling down the runway. Looks like we might have a little bit of right crosswind. You can see that windsock up there on the right. There we go. Airspeed's alive. And rotate. It is a little gusty right now. Woo! Woo! We're good though. We're good though. We're good though. All right. Climbing out. Bring those flaps up. And look, the flaps are up. What else can you expect from some flight sim controls? Now we're going to go ahead and climb up to altitude, and we're going to go through an appropriate leaning procedure that we would do in a Cessna 172 if we were actually flying it. And that's really what desktop pilot controls are meant for, is a positive transference of training from what you're experiencing with your flight instructor, from what you're experiencing in the actual aircraft to your desk at home, on top of your desk. No wonder they're called desktop pilot. And it's not just for those who are out actually flying airplanes. You guys who are really into simulator flying, obviously you can use these as well. And if you want to get 10% off, use promo code CheezePilot10, CheesePilot, and the numbers 10 for 10% off. Then we're going to continue our climb. All right, and now that we are just about leveling off at our cruising altitude of 4,500, we're gonna trim the airplane out, get the power back to a nice cruise RPM of about 2,300. Maybe just a little more in. Just as finicky as the actual aircraft. We'll set the friction lock to make sure that, well, the throttle stays. I know it is simulated. It is just a controller, but it does still have an actual friction lock that actually works. It's pretty nice. Now, let's lean this airplane. So we're going to come over here to our engine panel. We're going to hit our lean assist. And we are going to lean for peak EGT, or peak exhaust gas temperature. Let's cycle through our screens so that we can get a better view on it. So we can see right up at the top right here, we've got our EGT and our CHT. We're currently burning about 9.4 gallons per hour. And we are level at our altitude of 4,500. So let's bring it back to our nice cruise RPM of 2,400. Just a little more reduction in power. There we go. Now let's lean for peak exhaust gas temperature. So we can see that exhaust gas temperature very slowly rising. Same way we would expect to see it in the airplane. Got up to 1420, 1425. I'll go ahead and wait just a little bit. Make sure that that EGT is not going to go up much higher on me, because it can take a little while to respond. There we go. Letting that exhaust gas temperature build, and without such a fine granular control like this, I may very well not be able to properly represent the aircraft at home. And as an instructor, I've seen it time and time again where students will practice something at home and they'll practice it the wrong way and not be able to represent it appropriately in the aircraft based on their training at home. Now, if they were to have something like this at home, it would be a whole lot easier to practice procedures like leaning, because I have seen so many students shut an engine down in flight because they don't understand how to properly lean their engine. There we go. We saw the EGT drop. So we're going to increase it back so that we can get 50 degrees rich of peak EGT. And I believe our peak EGT was 1490. So we're going to enrich in the mixture so that we can go from 1490 down to 1440 to be at the appropriate Lycoming recommended lean for this RPM, for this altitude. And I think I'm just about there. Maybe I need to just bring it out just a little bit. Fucking perfect. Just a little bit more. Perfect. Now, do you think you'd be able to do that with buttons? Do you think you'd be able to do that with your mouse here in the flight deck? Of course not. Of course not. You'd be over here like, and then the engine dies. All right. So if you really want to properly represent the aircraft, if you really want to make sure that you are getting the most accurate training at home, Desktop Pilot is definitely the best choice. Even when we start talking about emergency descents or off-field landings or running through your flows, running through any kind of procedure that you remember from your training, Desktop Pilot will definitely help you perfect those things at home without paying an instructor, 70, 80, 90 bucks an hour. I don't even know what instructors are charging nowadays. I know I don't charge that much when I teach ground training, but this is a whole lot cheaper than paying an instructor exuberant fees to sit in an airplane and run through flows. This is a whole lot cheaper than renting an airplane and messing up your flows, messing up your profiles, messing up the stuff that you should be able to practice at home. So let's head on back to Chandler and we'll get a landing out of this thing. Actually, Chandler is a bit far. We're going to head to this airport. I believe that is Pegasus. It's going to be just on the other side of this mountain range. So let's get that power back in. We're getting ready to go land. So we're going to go enrich in the mixture and start our descent. Go ahead and turn our landing light on so that everybody can see us. A little high on that RPM. Now I gotta ask, it's kind of bumpy out here. We see this yellow line on our speed. Let me know in the comments if you think that it's safe for me to exceed into that yellow line during this kind of turbulent air. I'm gonna see how many of y'all are actually ready for your check ride. All right, and there is Pegasus right off our right. We are currently entering a little bit of an oblong, dog-legged kind of right base, messed up final. It's all good. It's a simulator, but at least we got to practice with the appropriate controls. So if you are in the market, for some kind of flight sim setup for your house, right? Or for your home, or for your even training facility, right? Even if you are, just starting out as a flight instructor or as a flight school, and you're just looking for a kind of an affordable way to help students practice, Desktop Pilot is definitely a pretty good option, all right? So here we are turning final. We're below 110. We can go flaps 10.
500.
Go ahead and turn our fuel pump on. Below 85, flaps can go 20. And then we can go flaps full. Getting right down to our approach speed. That was a little tough. That was a little rough landing. But that's why we practice with Desktop Pilot. So would I recommend Desktop Pilot gear over other gear? If your goal is specifically training, going through your flows, your profiles, all that stuff that you really need to have down in the first section of your flight training, then yes, I obviously recommend it. Now, if you're just out here trying to have fun, I still recommend it. It still properly represents the aircraft. It helps with the immersion. If you're doing things in VR, it would be so much easier to be able to feel these things so that you know which one you're actually grabbing, as opposed to trying to fly in VR with something like this. In the Airbus, this is great. Everything else, it breaks the immersion, right? So even with something like the Honeycomb doesn't have this granular control. The Honeycomb doesn't have these twist, what do you want to call them? I don't know, these little screw ones, the ones that make it real easy to make the real fine-tune adjustments. All right? So, I definitely recommend the Desktop Pilot gear. And if you go down to the link below, you'll get 10% off by using promo code CheezePilot10. Now, let me know if you've got any questions about any of these individual components, and maybe we'll make a video on the individual components. But for now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you get notified every time we come out with another video. And as always, keep it cheesy.